Good evening, and welcome to another gentle journey through time with whispered histories. I'm here with you tonight as we prepare to spend the next 4 hours in one of history's most peaceful and life-giving places, the fertile banks of the ancient Nile River. Tonight, we're not visiting pharaohs or pyramid builders, but the gentle farmers whose daily rhythms created the foundation of Egyptian civilization for over 3,000 years. We'll walk alongside families who lived in harmony with the river's annual flood cycle, who understood the language of seasons, soil, and seeds in ways that connected them deeply to the natural world. Take a moment now to settle into your most comfortable position. Adjust your pillows, pull your covers close, and let the day's concerns drift away like silt settling in calm water. Close your eyes and imagine the soft, golden light of early morning spreading across the Nile Delta, where the great river spreads into countless channels before reaching the Mediterranean Sea. Our story begins during the season the Egyptians called Ake, the time of inundation, when the Nile's annual flood brings life-giving water and rich black soil to the valley. We'll spend time with a farming family in a small village called Menepher, located in the fertile region south of Memphis, during the reign of Amenhotep III in the 14th century BCE, a time of peace and prosperity when Egypt's farmers perfected agricultural techniques that would feed the kingdom for generations. The sounds around us are gentle and timeless, the soft lapping of river water against muddy banks, the distant calls of ibis and herons, the whispered conversations of farmers checking their fields in the cool morning air. Palm fronds rustle softly in the river breeze, and somewhere in the distance, a farmer's wife hums an ancient song as she grinds grain for the morning bread. Let your breathing slow and deepen as we prepare to enter this world of seasonal rhythms, family traditions, and the profound satisfaction that comes from working in partnership with nature's cycles. Tonight, we'll discover how the ancient Egyptians created not just an agricultural system, but a way of life that brought peace, prosperity, and deep connection to the land that sustained them. Chapter 1: Dawn along the Sacred River. The first light of dawn creeps slowly across the eastern horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of rose and gold. The Great Nile flows peacefully northward, its surface like polished bronze in the early morning light. Along its banks, the ancient rhythm of Egyptian farm life begins another day with gentle, time-honored traditions. In the small village of Menepher, the houses are beginning to stir. These are not the grand palaces of pharaohs, but modest homes built of mud brick and designed with practical wisdom accumulated over centuries. The walls are thick to keep out the desert heat, and small windows placed strategically to catch the cooling river breeze. Flat rooftops serve as additional living space where families can sleep under the stars during the hottest months. Our story centers on the family of Katie, a farmer whose ancestors have worked this same stretch of riverbank for 7 generations. His family's plot of land, about 12 acres in size, represents a comfortable holding that can support an extended family of 15 people across 3 generations. The land has been in their family since the time of Katie's great-grandfather, granted by the local governor in recognition of their skill and dedication. Katie awakens naturally as he has for 43 years, his internal rhythm attuned to the subtle changes in light that mark the approaching dawn. Beside him, his wife Nebet sleeps peacefully, her breathing soft and regular. In the next room, their 3 children, Seneb, aged 16, Anku, aged 13, and little Iset, just 8 years old, rest on comfortable sleeping mats woven from river reeds. The house smells of the dried herbs that hang from the rafters, coriander, dill, and fenugreek that Nebet uses both for cooking and for the simple medicines that keep the family healthy. Clay water jars, kept cool by evaporation, line one wall. Storage baskets filled with grain from last year's harvest occupy another corner, their contents carefully rationed to last until the next harvest season. Katie rises quietly and steps outside into the cool morning air. The temperature is perfect, warm enough to be comfortable, but still touched with the coolness that the river brings to the valley. He breathes deeply, tasting the moisture in the air that tells him the flood season is progressing exactly as it should. From his doorway, Katie can see across his family's fields to the river itself. The Nile is high now, during the inundation season, its waters spreading across the floodplain in a vast, shallow lake that stretches from the river's normal banks to the edge of the desert cliffs in the distance. This annual flood is not a disaster to be feared, but the source of all life in Egypt, the event that makes their civilization possible. The floodwater is a rich brown color, heavy with fertile silt carried from the highlands of Ethiopia and Sudan. This silt, when it settles as the floodwaters recede, will leave behind a layer of incredibly rich soil that makes Egypt's fields among the most productive in the ancient world. The Egyptians call this rich black earth, Kemet, and it gives their entire country its ancient name, the Black Land. Other farmers are beginning to emerge from their homes throughout the village. Katie exchanges quiet greetings with his neighbor Amenemheb, whose fields adjoin his own. Their families have worked side by side for generations, sharing labor during busy seasons and helping each other through difficult times. This spirit of cooperation is essential to Egyptian farming. No family can manage all the work alone. The village consists of about 30 households, each with their own fields but all part of a larger community that shares certain resources. There's a communal granary where surplus grain is stored, a shared threshing floor where grain is separated from chaff, and several wells that provide water during the dry season when the Nile is at its lowest level. As Katie walks through the village, he passes the workshop of Tahotep, the local carpenter who makes and repairs the wooden tools essential for farming, plows, hoes, grain measures, and the shadufs that lift water from the river to irrigate the fields. Next door lives Kamwasit, a potter whose family creates the ceramic jars, bowls, and storage vessels that every farming household needs. The baker's house is already active, with smoke rising from the outdoor oven where the day's bread is being prepared. The aroma of baking bread mingles with the scent of the river and the earthy smell of wet soil, creating a combination of fragrances that defines life along the Nile. Bread is the foundation of every meal, and Egyptian farmers have developed dozens of varieties, each suited to different occasions and seasons. Katie continues his morning walk to the edge of his fields, where he stands quietly for a few minutes, observing the water level and checking for any changes since yesterday. This daily ritual of observation is central to Egyptian farming. Success depends on understanding the subtle signs that nature provides about weather, water levels, and soil conditions. The current flood level is exactly what Katie hoped to see. The water has risen gradually over the past month, reaching the optimal height that will cover his fields with about 3 feet of rich river water. Too little water means some fields won't be properly fertilized. Too much water can damage the irrigation channels and delay planting. But this year, the flood appears to be perfect. In the distance, Katie can see other farmers making their own morning inspections. Some wade into the shallow floodwater to check the condition of the small dikes and channels that will guide the water's flow as it recedes. Others examine the markers they've placed to measure the flood's progress. This collective monitoring ensures that the entire community stays informed about conditions that affect everyone's livelihood. Birds are active along the river in the early morning hours. Flocks of ibis wade through the shallow water, their long beaks probing for small fish and insects. Herons stand motionless in the reeds, waiting patiently for unwary prey to come within striking distance. Ducks and geese paddle peacefully across the open water, their soft calls adding to the gentle soundtrack of dawn along the Nile. These birds are more than just part of the scenery, they're integral to the Egyptian farming system. Many species help control insects that might damage crops. Others, like the sacred ibis, are welcomed because they're associated with Thoth, the god of wisdom and measurement who helps farmers understand the proper timing for their work. As the sun climbs higher, the quality of light begins to change. The soft, cool light of dawn gives way to the warmer, brighter illumination that will define the day. Katie heads back toward his house, ready to join his family for the morning meal and to begin another day of the gentle work that maintains their connection to this fertile land. The morning meal is simple but nourishing. Nebbit has prepared fresh bread, cheese made from goat's milk, figs from the tree in their small garden, and beer brewed from barley grown in their own fields. The family gathers around a low wooden table, sitting on woven mats that Nebbit made during the previous winter. Conversation during breakfast is quiet and focused on the day's plans. Senub, the eldest son, will help his father check the irrigation channels that will soon need to be cleared for the planting season. Enku will tend the family's small flock of geese and help his mother with household tasks. Little Iset will play near the house under the watchful eyes of her grandmother, Katie's mother Mirret, who lives with the family and contributes her wisdom and experience to daily decisions. The rhythm of this morning routine is peaceful and unhurried. Egyptian farmers have learned that rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes in farming can mean the difference between prosperity and hunger. Every task is performed with careful attention, and there's always time for the small courtesies that maintain family harmony and village relationships. Chapter 2: The Wisdom of Waters, Understanding the Flood. After the morning meal, Katie and his son Senub make their way to the fields to begin the day's most important task, monitoring and managing the flood waters that will determine the success of the coming growing season. This work requires deep knowledge passed down through generations, combined with careful daily observation of conditions that change subtly but significantly. The flood season, which the Egyptians call Ake, typically lasts from July through October in our modern calendar. But Egyptian farmers don't think in terms of months as we do. They organize their year around the river's natural cycle, dividing it into 3 seasons of 4 months each: Ake, inundation; Parate, growing; and Shimu, harvest. Understanding these seasons and their subtle variations is the foundation of Egyptian agricultural success. Katie learned this knowledge from his father, just as his father learned from his grandfather, in an unbroken chain of wisdom stretching back hundreds of years. Today, he's beginning to pass this same knowledge to Senub, who will one day manage these same fields for his own family. They walk together along the raised pathways that divide the fields into manageable sections. These pathways, called bunds, serve multiple purposes. They provide dry walking routes during flood season, they help control the flow of water across the fields, and they serve as boundaries between different families' holdings. The bunds are carefully maintained year-round, reinforced with stones and clay to resist the erosive power of the annual flood. "Look at the watercolor today," Katie says quietly to his son, pointing toward a section where floodwater spreads across their barley field. "What do you see?" Senub studies the water carefully, applying lessons his father has taught him over many seasons. "It's darker than yesterday," he observes. "More brown, less red. And I can see small twigs and leaves floating. The current is slower than it was 3 days ago." Katie nods approvingly. "Good. The darker color means more fertile silt is suspended in the water. The slower current means the flood is reaching its peak. Soon it will begin to recede, and that silt will settle into our soil. In another week, we should be able to begin preparing the seed beds." This kind of detailed observation is essential for Egyptian farming success. The flood varies from year to year, and farmers must adjust their techniques accordingly. Some years bring high floods that require different management than low flood years. Some floods peak early, others late. Successful farmers learn to read these variations and respond appropriately. They continue their inspection, walking along a channel that brings floodwater from the main river to their fields. This channel, called a canal, was dug by the community working together under the guidance of local officials. It requires constant maintenance to prevent silting and to ensure that water flows evenly to all the fields it serves. See how the water flows here. Katie points to a spot where the canal makes a gentle curve. We built this curve deliberately, not straight. The curve slows the water and helps prevent erosion. Straight channels create fast currents that can wash away our banks. Egyptian irrigation represents thousands of years of accumulated engineering wisdom. The system works with natural forces rather than fighting against them. Channels follow the natural contours of the land. Basin fields are designed to hold water at optimal depths. Spillways and overflow channels prevent dangerous flooding while ensuring that every drop of precious water is used effectively. Senab asks about a group of workers visible in the distance, waist-deep in floodwater and working with long poles and woven baskets. They're clearing the intake channel for the next village upstream, his father explains. During flood season, debris can block water flow. Every community is responsible for maintaining their section of the system. This cooperative maintenance is coordinated by local officials appointed by the regional governor. But the actual work is done by the farmers themselves, who understand that their individual success depends on the system working properly for everyone. Villages take turns providing labor for major projects, and families help each other with repairs and improvements. The mathematical precision required for Egyptian irrigation is remarkable. Channel gradients must be calculated to ensure proper water flow without excessive erosion. Basin sizes must be proportioned to field areas and expected flood levels. Storage capacity must be planned to match crop water requirements throughout the growing season. Katie shows his son a series of wooden posts driven into the ground along their main irrigation channel. These posts are marked with horizontal lines at different heights, creating a primitive but effective gauge for measuring water depth and flow rates. Your great-grandfather placed these posts, Katie explains. We use them to compare each year's flood with previous years. Records of flood levels are kept by local scribes and reported to regional administrators who track patterns across the entire kingdom. This information helps predict food production and plan for years when harvests might be above or below normal. The Egyptian government maintains strategic grain reserves based partly on these flood predictions. They walk along the edge of the floodwater, observing how different areas of their land respond to inundation. Sandy areas drain more quickly and will be ready for planting sooner. Clay areas hold water longer but will eventually produce richer crops. Rocky areas require special techniques to retain enough moisture for successful cultivation. Every piece of land has its own personality, Katie tells his son. Successful farming means understanding each area's needs and working with its natural characteristics, not against them. Near a grove of date palms that marks the boundary between their land and their neighbors, they pause to check a shaduf, an ingenious device that uses leverage to lift water from canals to higher ground. The shaduf consists of a long pole balanced on a vertical post, with a bucket on one end and a heavy counterweight on the other. A single person can operate it to move large quantities of water with relatively little effort. Senab practices using the shaduf while his father watches approvingly. The rhythm of the work is gentle and meditative. Lower the bucket into the water, let it fill, lift it using the counterweight's assistance, swing the pole to position the bucket over the target area, tip the bucket to release the water, and repeat. A skilled operator can move hundreds of gallons per hour with this simple but effective tool. The shaduf teaches patience, Katie observes. You cannot rush the water. You must work with the tool's natural rhythm, not fight against it. This is true for all farming. We succeed by cooperating with natural forces, not by trying to dominate them. Wildlife is abundant during flood season. Fish swim in the temporary lakes created by inundation, providing an additional food source for farming families. Migrating birds arrive in huge numbers, attracted by the rich feeding opportunities. Frogs and other amphibians emerge in vast numbers, their nighttime chorus providing a natural symphony that defines the season. Some of this wildlife requires management. Hippopotamuses, numerous in ancient times, could damage crops and threaten human safety. Crocodiles were respected but dangerous. Birds could consume significant quantities of grain if not controlled. Egyptian farmers developed various techniques for managing these challenges while maintaining the ecological balance that supported their agricultural system. As they complete their morning inspection, Katie and Seneb stop at a small shrine dedicated to Hapi, the god of the Nile flood. The shrine is simple, just a stone platform with a small offering bowl and a carved image of the god depicted as a well-fed man with feminine breasts, symbolizing the nourishing abundance that the flood brings to Egypt. Katie places a small offering of bread and beer at the shrine, saying a quiet prayer of gratitude for the good flood this year and requesting continued blessings for the growing season ahead. This is not superstition but genuine spiritual connection to forces larger than any individual farmer can control. The gods help those who help themselves, Katie explains to his son. We work hard, we use our knowledge and skills, but we also acknowledge that much depends on forces beyond our control. Humility and gratitude keep us connected to the larger rhythms of life. The flood season represents a time of relative rest for crop farmers, but it's far from idle time. This is when repairs and improvements are made to tools, buildings, and irrigation systems. It's when new techniques are discussed and planned. It's when the community comes together to maintain the cooperative relationships that make their agricultural system work. As the morning progresses and the sun climbs higher, father and son head back toward the village, satisfied with their inspection and confident that this year's flood will provide the foundation for another successful growing season. Their steps are unhurried, their conversation peaceful, reflecting the deep contentment that comes from work that connects them directly to the fundamental processes of life and growth. Chapter 3: Daily Rhythms of River Life. The midday sun casts short shadows as Katie and Seneb return to the village, where the gentle rhythms of daily life continue with the unhurried pace that characterizes Egyptian farm communities. The intense heat of midday brings a natural pause to outdoor work, creating time for family activities, community interaction, and the many small tasks that maintain household prosperity. Nebet has spent the morning hours in activities that complement her husband's field work. With the help of their daughter Anku, she has ground grain using a saddle quern, a curved stone surface over which a smaller stone is rolled to crush barley and wheat into flour. This daily task requires skill to achieve the right texture for different types of bread and porridge. The sound of grain grinding creates a rhythmic background to morning activities in Egyptian villages, a gentle scraping and rolling that speaks of abundance and careful preparation. Nebet has been grinding grain since she was Anku's age, and her hands move with practiced efficiency, applying just the right pressure to produce flour of consistent quality. Today's grinding yields enough flour for 3 days of bread making, plus extra for the small cakes sweetened with honey that the family enjoys during evening meals. Nebet stores the flour in ceramic jars sealed with clay lids and marked with hieroglyphic symbols that identify the contents and the date of preparation. While the flour settles, Nebet turns her attention to beer brewing, a task that every Egyptian housewife performs regularly. Beer is not just an alcoholic beverage but a nutritious food that provides calories, vitamins, and a safe alternative to water that might carry disease. Egyptian beer is thick and nourishing, more like liquid bread than modern beer. The brewing process begins with barley that has been partially baked into loaves, then crumbled and mixed with water in large ceramic vats. Wild yeasts present in the environment begin fermentation naturally, creating a mildly alcoholic beverage that can be consumed safely by adults and children alike. The process takes several days and requires careful monitoring to achieve proper fermentation without spoilage. Enku helps her mother by carrying water from the household's private well, a luxury that reflects the family's prosperous status. Not all families have their own wells, many depend on shared community sources or water carried from the river. The well water is sweet and cool, filtered naturally through layers of sand and clay. 8-year-old Iset plays near the house under the supervision of her grandmother Mirret, whose presence adds wisdom and stability to the household. Mirret no longer performs heavy labor, but she contributes countless small services that keep the family functioning smoothly. She tends the small vegetable garden behind the house, mends clothes and other textiles, and provides childcare that allows younger family members to focus on their specialized tasks. The garden behind the house reflects the Egyptian genius for intensive cultivation in small spaces. Onions, leeks, garlic, and lettuce grow in raised beds watered by hand from ceramic jars. A few chickens scratch among the vegetables, providing eggs and occasional meat while helping control garden pests. A tethered goat supplies milk for cheesemaking and contributes to the household's protein supply. Date palms provide shade for the garden while producing fruit that can be eaten fresh, dried for storage, or processed into syrup. The palm fronds serve multiple purposes: roofing material, basketry, and fuel for cooking fires. Even the palm trunks, when eventually harvested, provide valuable timber for construction projects. As the day grows warmer, family activities move to the shaded areas of the house and courtyard. This is time for the quieter work that requires concentration and skill. Nebet works on a piece of linen weaving, using flax grown in their own fields and processed through the lengthy steps required to produce thread suitable for high-quality cloth. The process of creating linen from flax plants involves harvesting the plants at just the right stage of maturity, soaking them to rot away unwanted plant material, beating and combing the fibers to separate them, spinning the fibers into thread, and finally weaving the thread into cloth. Egyptian linen is renowned throughout the ancient world for its quality and fineness. Seneb spends part of the midday rest period working on a wooden tool he's carving for the upcoming planting season. Using techniques his father taught him, he shapes a piece of sycamore wood into a seed drill, a pointed stick used to create holes for planting seeds at precisely the right depth and spacing. The work requires patience and attention to detail, qualities that transfer directly to successful farming. The craftsmanship involved in creating farming tools reflects the Egyptian appreciation for quality and durability. Tools are made to last for years of heavy use, and their design incorporates centuries of practical experience. Handles are shaped to fit comfortably in workers' hands. Cutting edges are designed for efficiency and ease of sharpening. Weight and balance are carefully calculated to minimize fatigue during long days of use. Katie uses the midday break to visit with neighbors and discuss community concerns. Today's conversations focus on plans for the coming planting season, sharing information about successful techniques, and coordinating the community labor that will be needed for various projects. The village headman, a respected farmer named Nebaman who was elected by his neighbors, stops by to discuss the timing for clearing irrigation channels once the floodwater recedes. This work requires careful coordination among all the families whose fields depend on shared water sources. Too early, and the channels will silt up again before planting. Too late, and planting will be delayed beyond the optimal timing. These community discussions reflect the sophisticated social organization required for successful agriculture in the Nile Valley. Individual families manage their own fields, but many essential tasks require cooperative effort. The balance between individual initiative and community cooperation has been refined over centuries of experience. Children play games during the midday rest, their activities supervised but not overly controlled by adults. Egyptian culture values childhood as a time for learning through play, and many children's games mirror adult activities while developing skills that will be useful in later life. Iset and several neighbor children play a game called Kutsa, which involves throwing sticks at targets and helps develop hand-eye coordination useful for farming tasks. Boys practice with miniature tools, learning the motions and rhythms of adult work through imitation and repetition. Girls work with small looms and grinding stones, developing the manual skills essential for household management. The afternoon brings renewed activity as temperatures begin to moderate. This is time for tasks that require mobility but not the intense effort of morning field work. Families check on livestock, tend gardens, and prepare for evening activities. Katie and Seneb walk to the village threshing floor, where grain from the previous harvest is stored in large granary buildings constructed and maintained by the community. The granaries use sophisticated design principles to protect stored grain from moisture, rodents, and insects. Raised floors keep grain off the ground, thick walls moderate temperature fluctuations, and careful sealing prevents pest infiltration. The grain storage system represents one of ancient Egypt's great achievements in food security. Good storage techniques allow communities to maintain reserves that carry them through poor harvest years and provide seed grain for the following season. The Egyptian government maintains strategic reserves at regional and national levels, ensuring that local shortages could be addressed through redistribution from areas with surplus production. Individual families also maintain their own reserves. Katie shows his son the family's private granary, built into a corner of their house and containing enough grain to feed the family for over a year even if the next harvest fails completely. This reserve provides security and peace of mind that allows the family to take reasonable risks in their farming operations. As afternoon shadows begin to lengthen, the pace of village life gradually slows toward the peaceful rhythms of evening. Cooking fires are lit, children are called in from their games, and livestock are secured for the night. The day's work has been accomplished with the steady, unhurried competence that characterizes successful farming communities. The smell of cooking food begins to drift through the village, bread baking in outdoor ovens, vegetables simmering in clay pots, fish caught in the morning being prepared for evening meals. These aromas create a sense of abundance and security that reflects the success of the agricultural system that supports this way of life. Evening brings the family together around the simple wooden table where they shared breakfast many hours ago. The evening meal is more substantial than breakfast, featuring bread, beer, vegetables from their garden, and perhaps fish caught during the day by village fishermen who work the river while farmers tend the land. Conversation during the evening meal focuses on the day's activities and plans for tomorrow. There's discussion of the flood's progress, observations about weather patterns, and gentle family news. The pace of conversation is unhurried, allowing each family member to contribute observations and concerns. After the meal, as darkness settles over the village, families gather in courtyards and on rooftops to enjoy the cool evening air. This is time for storytelling, music, and the social activities that maintain community bonds and pass cultural knowledge from one generation to the next. Chapter 4: Seasons of Growth, the Art of Cultivation. As weeks pass and the flood season gradually gives way to the growing season called parade, the landscape along the Nile transforms from a vast shallow lake back to fertile fields ready for cultivation. This transition period requires intense activity from farming families, who must complete their planting within the narrow window when soil conditions are optimal. The transformation begins subtly. Katie notices that the floodwater has stopped rising and begun to recede slowly, revealing patches of rich, dark soil that steam gently in the warm morning air. The receding water leaves behind a layer of fertile silt that will nourish crops throughout the growing season. This silt contains not just soil particles, but organic matter and minerals carried from the Ethiopian highlands thousands of miles to the south. Timing is crucial during this transition period. Seeds must be planted when the soil contains enough moisture to support germination but not so much water that seeds rot before they can sprout. Egyptian farmers have developed sophisticated techniques for determining optimal planting conditions, based on careful observation of soil texture, moisture content, and temperature. Katie tests the soil readiness by digging small holes in different parts of his fields and examining the earth's consistency and color. He crumbles soil samples between his fingers, assessing moisture levels and checking for the proper balance between clay, sand, and organic matter. He looks for the rich, dark color that indicates high fertility and the slightly sticky texture that shows optimal moisture content. The soil speaks to those who know how to listen, Katie explains to Seneb as they conduct their morning inspection. Too wet, and our seeds will drown. Too dry, and they will not germinate. But when conditions are perfect, the soil has a particular feel and smell that tells us it's ready to receive our crops. The first fields to be planted are those containing the highest, best-drained soils. These areas dry out quickly after the flood recedes, allowing early planting of crops that need the longest growing season. Lower, moister areas will be planted later with crops that can tolerate more moisture and shorter growing periods. Egyptian farmers grow a diverse mix of crops, each chosen for its specific characteristics and requirements. Emmer wheat and barley are the primary grain crops, providing the foundation of the Egyptian diet. But farmers also cultivate flax for linen production, various legumes for protein and soil improvement, and an assortment of vegetables and fruits for dietary variety. The preparation of seed beds requires careful attention to soil structure and drainage. Katie and Seneb work together to break up any compacted areas created by flood water, using wooden hoes to create a smooth, level surface that will provide uniform growing conditions for their crops. The wooden hoe is one of the most important tools in Egyptian agriculture. Katie's hoe has been shaped from a single piece of hardwood, with the blade angled to cut through soil efficiently while the long handle provides leverage to reduce the physical effort required. The tool has been worn smooth by years of use, and its balance feels perfect in Katie's experienced hands. Soil preparation also involves creating the subtle ridges and furrows that will guide irrigation water to plant roots while preventing erosion and waterlogging. This microtopography requires considerable skill to achieve properly, and represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of Egyptian farming technique. The actual planting process begins with careful selection of seed grain from the previous year's harvest. Katie has saved grain from his best-performing fields, choosing seeds from plants that showed superior growth, disease resistance, and grain quality. This selective process, repeated over generations, has gradually improved crop performance and adapted varieties to local conditions. Seed grain has been carefully stored in sealed ceramic jars to protect it from moisture, insects, and rodents. Before planting, the seeds are inspected one final time to remove any that show signs of damage or disease. Only perfect seeds are planted, ensuring the best possible start for the new crop. Seeding techniques vary depending on the crop being planted. Grain crops like wheat and barley are typically broadcast by hand, with experienced farmers achieving remarkably uniform distribution through years of practice. The broadcaster walks steadily across the prepared field, casting handfuls of seed in an overlapping pattern that ensures even coverage without waste. Seneb practices the broadcasting technique under his father's guidance, learning the precise wrist motion and timing that creates uniform seed distribution. The work requires rhythm and consistency. Too heavy a hand wastes expensive seed, while too light a touch creates gaps where weeds can establish themselves. After broadcasting, the seeds are covered by dragging wooden harrows across the field or by driving livestock over the seeded area. The covering process protects seeds from birds and helps ensure good contact between seeds and soil, promoting rapid germination when moisture conditions are favorable. Some crops require more precise planting techniques. Flax seeds are planted in carefully spaced rows to optimize fiber quality and ease of harvesting. Vegetable crops are often planted in raised beds that provide better drainage and easier cultivation. Fruit trees and date palms are planted with particular attention to long-term growth requirements and irrigation needs. The irrigation of newly planted fields requires exceptional skill and timing. Too much water can wash away seeds or cause them to rot. Too little water prevents germination or creates uneven crop emergence. Egyptian farmers have developed sophisticated techniques for applying exactly the right amount of water at the optimal time. The shaduf plays a crucial role in crop irrigation, allowing farmers to move water from canals and storage basins to specific field areas as needed. Katie and Seneb work together to operate their shaduf, with one person managing the bucket while the other directs the water flow to areas that need irrigation. The rhythm of shaduf operation is meditative and satisfying. The counterweight makes the work easier, but steady effort is still required to move the large quantities of water that successful crop production demands. The sound of water splashing into irrigation channels provides a peaceful soundtrack to this essential farming activity. Field layout and water management are closely integrated in Egyptian agriculture. Fields are divided into basins of various sizes, each designed to hold water at the optimal depth for the crops planted there. Channels and gates allow farmers to control water flow precisely, directing irrigation to specific areas as crop needs change throughout the growing season. The basin irrigation system represents thousands of years of accumulated engineering wisdom. Basin walls are built to exactly the right height to contain water without creating waterlogging problems. Spillways and drainage channels prevent flood damage while ensuring that excess water is not wasted. Intake gates can be opened or closed to regulate water flow as conditions change. Wildlife management becomes important during the growing season as birds and other animals are attracted to tender young crops. Egyptian farmers use various techniques to protect their plantings without eliminating the beneficial wildlife that helps control insects and other pests. Scarecrows fashioned from palm fronds and old clothing provide basic protection from birds. Children often help with crop protection by walking through fields and making noise to discourage feeding flocks. Some farmers use trained birds of prey to patrol their fields and discourage crop-eating species. The relationship between farmers and wildlife is generally cooperative rather than antagonistic. Many birds help control insects that would otherwise damage crops. Predatory animals help control rodent populations that might consume stored grain. The challenge is managing this relationship to optimize benefits while minimizing crop losses. As crops begin to emerge from the soil, daily field inspection becomes a crucial activity. Katie walks through his fields each morning and evening, checking on germination rates, identifying potential problems, and planning any interventions that might be needed. The early stages of crop growth require particularly careful attention. Young plants are vulnerable to disease, insect damage, and competition from weeds. Problems identified and addressed early can often be corrected easily, while the same problems ignored until later may result in significant crop losses. Weed control is an ongoing challenge that requires both preventive measures and active management. Good soil preparation helps prevent weed establishment, while timely cultivation can eliminate young weeds before they become established. The key is working with hoes and other tools when weeds are small and vulnerable, rather than waiting until they have grown large and developed extensive root systems. Seneb learns weed identification from his father, studying the subtle differences between crop seedlings and the various weeds that compete for nutrients, water, and sunlight. Some weeds can be tolerated in small numbers, while others must be eliminated immediately to prevent crop damage. This knowledge represents generations of accumulated observation and experience. The sound of gentle hoeing fills the morning air as farmers throughout the village tend their young crops. The rhythm is peaceful and methodical: scrape, lift, move forward, scrape again. The work requires patience and attention to detail, but it provides the meditative satisfaction that comes from nurturing growing plants toward maturity. Crop rotation plays an important role in maintaining soil fertility and controlling pests and diseases. Katie's fields follow a planned rotation that alternates grain crops with legumes and occasionally allows fields to lie fallow during flood season to restore their natural fertility. Legume crops like lentils, chickpeas, and fava beans not only provide protein-rich food but actually improve soil fertility by fixing nitrogen from the air through their root systems. These crops are often grown on fields that produced grain the previous year, helping to restore the soil's ability to support high-yield grain production. The integration of crop rotation with the annual flood cycle creates a sustainable agricultural system that has supported Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. Fields that are allowed to flood without crops receive natural fertilization from river silt. Fields planted immediately after flooding benefit from maximum soil fertility. The system maintains productivity while preventing the soil depletion that often results from continuous cultivation. As the growing season progresses and crops develop from seedlings to mature plants, the daily routines of farming life settle into the peaceful rhythms that define Egyptian rural culture. Morning inspections, midday rest, afternoon cultivation, and evening family time create a pattern of life closely connected to natural cycles and seasonal changes. The maturing crops transform the landscape from brown earth to green fields that stretch from the river to the desert edge. Grain crops wave gently in the river breeze, their color gradually changing from bright green to golden yellow as harvest time approaches. The sight of successful crops growing toward maturity provides deep satisfaction to farming families who have invested months of careful work in their cultivation. Chapter 5: Community and Cooperation, the Village at Work. The success of Egyptian agriculture depends not just on individual family efforts, but on the sophisticated cooperation that exists among village communities along the Nile. As the growing season progresses and crops mature toward harvest, this spirit of mutual assistance becomes especially evident in the many tasks that require more labor than any single family can provide. The village of Mennefer operates according to principles of cooperation that have evolved over centuries of shared experience. While each family manages their own fields independently, certain activities require community effort to be successful. These cooperative activities strengthen social bonds while ensuring that essential work gets accomplished efficiently and effectively. One of the most important community activities is the maintenance of the irrigation system that serves the entire village. The main canal that brings water from the Nile to the village fields requires regular cleaning to remove silt and debris that accumulates during flood season. This work must be completed before the main growing season begins, and it requires more labor than any individual family could provide. Nebaman, the village headman, organizes the canal cleaning as a community project in which every family participates according to their ability. Families with several adult men provide more physical labor, while families with fewer able-bodied members contribute food for the workers or help with other supporting tasks. The work begins at dawn with a gathering at the head of the main canal. About 40 men from the village bring their shovels, baskets, and other tools needed for the cleaning operation. The work is organized efficiently, with teams assigned to different sections of the canal to ensure that the entire system is cleaned systematically. Katie works alongside his neighbors Amenemheb and Hori, their conversation quiet and companionable as they remove accumulated silt from the canal bottom. The work is physically demanding but not rushed. The community has allocated enough time to complete the job thoroughly without exhausting the workers. The silt removed from the canal is not wasted but carefully distributed on fields where it will provide additional fertilization. This practice demonstrates the Egyptian genius for finding beneficial uses for every byproduct of their agricultural system. Nothing is considered waste if it can contribute to soil fertility or crop production. Senab works with a group of teenage boys, learning the techniques of canal maintenance while contributing his labor to the community effort. This work provides practical education in hydraulic engineering principles while building social connections with his age peers who will be his lifelong neighbors and collaborators. The women of the village support the canal cleaning project by preparing food and drink for the workers. Large pots of barley stew simmer over fires tended by groups of women working together. Fresh bread is baked in quantities sufficient to feed the entire workforce. Beer and water are kept cool in shaded areas and carried to the workers throughout the day. This division of labor reflects not rigid social restrictions but practical organization based on physical capabilities and specialized skills. Men typically perform the heavy excavation work, while women manage the complex logistics of feeding and supporting a large workforce. Both contributions are essential for project success. Children also participate in community projects according to their abilities. Older children help carry tools and materials, while younger ones assist with food preparation or simply observe and learn the principles of community cooperation that will guide their adult lives. The canal cleaning project creates opportunities for social interaction that strengthen village bonds. Workers share news and gossip, discuss farming techniques, and make plans for future cooperative activities. Young people have opportunities to interact with potential marriage partners from other families, while elders share wisdom and experience with younger community members. Musical entertainment often accompanies community work projects. Someone brings a flute or small drum, and workers sing traditional songs that help coordinate group activities while making the labor more enjoyable. These work songs often tell stories of successful harvests, heroic achievements, or humorous situations that have become part of village folklore. The completion of major community projects is typically celebrated with shared meals and festivities that reinforce the social bonds created through cooperative work. The canal cleaning project concludes with a communal feast featuring food prepared by village women and shared by all the families who contributed to the work. Another important community activity is the collective harvesting that helps families complete their field work within the narrow time window when crops are at optimal maturity. Grain crops must be harvested quickly once they reach peak ripeness, and families with large fields may need additional labor to complete the work before weather or other factors can damage their crops. Harvest cooperation is organized through informal networks of mutual assistance that operate throughout the village. Families help each other with the understanding that they will receive similar help when their own fields are ready for harvest. This system ensures that no family loses crops due to insufficient labor while strengthening the relationships that make village life sustainable. The actual harvest work requires coordination among multiple activities that must happen simultaneously. Some workers cut grain using wooden sickles with flint or copper blades. Others gather the cut grain into bundles that can be transported efficiently. Still others operate the sledges and carts that carry harvested grain to the village threshing floor. The threshing floor itself represents a major community investment that demonstrates the benefits of cooperative resource sharing. Individual families could not justify the expense of creating private threshing facilities, but the community threshing floor serves all families efficiently while providing a social gathering place during harvest season. Threshing work involves driving livestock over harvested grain to separate the edible seeds from the inedible stalks and chaff. Cattle, donkeys, and sometimes specially trained oxen trample the grain systematically until the separation is complete. The work requires careful management to ensure thorough threshing without damaging the grain itself. The community owns several teams of threshing animals that are used by families in rotation according to schedules established by village leaders. Families contribute to the animals' care and feeding in proportion to their use of the threshing services. This cooperative arrangement ensures that every family has access to efficient threshing without the expense of maintaining their own livestock. Winnowing follows threshing and involves separating grain from chaff by tossing the mixture into the air on windy days. The heavier grain falls straight down while lighter chaff is blown away by the wind. This process requires skill to achieve clean separation, and experienced winnowers are valued for their expertise. Community storage facilities provide another example of beneficial cooperation. While families maintain private reserves for their immediate needs, the village granary stores surplus grain that can be distributed during poor harvest years or sold to provide income for community projects. The village granary is managed by elected officials who keep careful records of deposits and withdrawals. Families contribute grain to the community reserve in good years and can draw on the reserve during difficult times. This system provides security that individual families could not achieve alone while building community resilience against crop failures or other disasters. Maintenance of the granary buildings requires periodic community work projects similar to canal cleaning. The mud brick construction needs regular repairs to maintain weatherproofing and pest resistance. These maintenance projects provide opportunities for social interaction while ensuring the security of community food reserves. The village also cooperates in maintaining shared facilities like wells, paths, and the small temple where families worship and seek guidance from local deities. These maintenance activities are scheduled to avoid conflicts with farming activities while ensuring that essential community infrastructure remains functional. Religious observances provide another focus for community cooperation. Seasonal festivals celebrating planting, growth, and harvest bring the entire village together for ceremonies that combine spiritual observance with social celebration. These festivals strengthen cultural identity while providing relaxation and entertainment that balance the serious work of agricultural production. The Festival of Min, god of fertility and harvest, is particularly important for farming communities. The celebration includes processions, offerings of first fruits, and communal meals that demonstrate gratitude for successful crops while asking for continued blessings in future seasons. Community cooperation also extends to education and cultural transmission. Elderly villagers share their knowledge and experience with younger generations through informal teaching that happens during work activities and social gatherings. Children learn farming techniques, traditional stories, religious observances, and social customs through participation in community life. The village supports a part-time scribe who provides writing services for families and helps maintain records of land ownership, grain storage, and other important information. The scribe also teaches basic literacy to children whose families can afford the instruction, ensuring that essential knowledge and skills are preserved and transmitted. Medical care represents another area of community cooperation. The village includes individuals with knowledge of herbal medicines and healing techniques who provide treatment for common injuries and illnesses. More serious medical problems may require consultation with specialists in larger towns, but the community provides basic healthcare that maintains the population's health and productivity. This web of cooperative relationships creates a resilient social system that can adapt to changing conditions while maintaining the stability essential for successful agriculture. Individual families retain independence in managing their own affairs while benefiting from community resources and support that enhance their security and prosperity. Chapter 6: Harvest Abundance, the Reward of Patience. The harvest season, called Shimu by the ancient Egyptians, represents the culmination of months of patient work and careful planning. As the hot, dry winds of late spring begin to blow across the Nile Valley, grain crops reach their golden maturity and families prepare for the intensive activity that will secure their food supply for the coming year. The transformation of green fields into golden waves of grain creates one of the most beautiful sights in the Egyptian countryside. Wheat and barley fields stretch from the river's edge to the desert boundary, their ripe heads heavy with grain and swaying gently in the warm breeze. The sight brings deep satisfaction to farming families who have invested months of labor in bringing their crops to this moment of abundance. Katie conducts his morning field inspection with particular attention to signs that indicate optimal harvest timing. The grain heads have turned from green to golden yellow, and individual seeds have reached full size and firmness. When he rubs grain heads between his palms, the seeds separate cleanly from their husks, a sign that moisture content has dropped to levels that will allow safe storage without spoilage. The timing of harvest is critical to crop quality and storage success. Grain harvested too early will have high moisture content that can lead to spoilage during storage. Grain harvested too late may shatter and fall to the ground, creating losses that could mean the difference between abundance and hunger during the coming year. Weather conditions add urgency to harvest planning. The Khamsin winds that blow from the desert during late spring can damage ripe crops if harvest is delayed too long. These hot, dry winds can cause grain to overmature and shatter, while dust storms can contaminate crops with sand that makes them difficult to process and consume. Egyptian farmers have developed sophisticated techniques for predicting weather patterns during harvest season. They observe cloud formations, wind directions, and the behavior of birds and other animals to anticipate weather changes that might affect their harvest activities. This traditional weather knowledge, passed down through generations, provides remarkably accurate short-term forecasting. The actual harvest begins before dawn, when cool air allows workers to labor comfortably during the intensive cutting and gathering activities. Katie, Senab, and several neighbors work together as a harvest team, sharing labor and ensuring that all their fields are harvested within the optimal time window. The primary harvesting tool is the sickle, a curved blade mounted on a short wooden handle that allows workers to cut grain stalks efficiently while maintaining control over the cutting process. Egyptian sickles are works of craftsmanship, with blades made from carefully shaped flint or, for wealthier farmers, copper that holds a sharp edge through long days of cutting. The cutting technique requires skill to achieve maximum efficiency while maintaining grain quality. Workers grasp bundles of grain stalks with their left hand while cutting with the right, creating uniform sheaves that can be handled efficiently during subsequent processing steps. The cut is made about halfway up the stalk, leaving stubble in the field while harvesting the grain-bearing portion. Senab has spent several seasons learning proper sickle technique from his father and other experienced harvesters. The work requires rhythm and endurance, a steady cutting motion that can be maintained for hours without excessive fatigue. Good technique prevents back strain while ensuring that grain is cut cleanly without damage to the seeds. Behind the cutters, other workers gather the cut grain into bundles called sheaves. These sheaves are tied with stalks of the same grain, creating compact packages that can be transported efficiently and stored temporarily without spoilage. The bundling work requires quick hands and good coordination to keep pace with the cutting teams. Children help with harvest activities according to their abilities and stamina. Older children work alongside adults, learning harvesting techniques while contributing significant labor to family efforts. Younger children help with lighter tasks like gathering dropped grain or carrying water and food to workers in the fields. The harvest work creates a festive atmosphere despite its demanding nature. Workers sing traditional harvest songs that help coordinate group activities while making the labor more enjoyable. These songs often tell stories of abundant harvests, successful farming families, or humorous incidents that have become part of local folklore. Women play crucial roles in harvest activities, managing the complex logistics of feeding work teams while participating directly in many harvesting tasks. They prepare large quantities of food and drink needed to sustain workers through long, physically demanding days. They also participate in grain cutting, bundling, and transport activities according to their abilities and family responsibilities. The community's cooperative spirit is especially evident during harvest season. Families help each other complete their harvest work, sharing labor and equipment to ensure that everyone's crops are gathered successfully. This mutual assistance is essential because harvest timing allows little flexibility. Crops must be gathered when they're ready, regardless of other considerations. Transport of harvested grain from fields to the village threshing floor requires careful organization to prevent losses and maintain grain quality. Donkeys and sledges are used to move large quantities efficiently, while human porters handle smaller loads and work in areas where animals cannot operate effectively. The village threshing floor becomes a center of intense activity during harvest season. Multiple families process their grain simultaneously, creating a busy but organized scene where traditional techniques separate grain from stalks and chaff. The work continues from dawn to dusk, with families working in rotation to use the shared facilities efficiently. Threshing techniques vary depending on the type of grain being processed and the equipment available. Most grain is threshed by driving livestock over it repeatedly, but some crops may be beaten with wooden flails or processed using wooden sledges fitted with stone or metal cutting edges that break up the grain stalks. The livestock used for threshing are specially trained for this work and carefully maintained to ensure their health and effectiveness. Oxen are particularly valued for threshing because of their weight and steady temperament. The animals are walked in circles over the grain, their hooves and weight breaking the connection between seeds and stalks. Winnowing follows threshing and requires favorable wind conditions to separate grain from chaff effectively. Workers use large, shallow baskets to toss grain and chaff mixtures into the air, allowing wind to blow away the lighter chaff while heavier grain falls back into the baskets. This process is repeated until the grain is completely clean. The winnowing process requires considerable skill to achieve clean separation without losing grain. Experienced winnowers know how to adjust their technique for different wind conditions and grain types. They work during optimal wind periods, typically in late afternoon when thermal currents create steady breezes perfect for winnowing work. Quality control during grain processing ensures that only the best grain is stored for food while damaged or inferior grain is separated for animal feed or other uses. This sorting process requires experienced eyes that can identify subtle differences in grain quality and make decisions that affect storage success and food security. Storage preparation begins immediately after winnowing and continues throughout the harvest season. Clean grain is placed in sealed ceramic jars or specially constructed granary buildings designed to protect stored grain from moisture, insects, and rodents. These storage facilities represent major investments that families maintain carefully to ensure long-term food security. The completion of successful harvest brings celebration that combines relief at securing the year's food supply with gratitude for the favorable conditions that made abundance possible. Harvest festivals include offerings to the gods, communal meals featuring the first fruits of the new harvest, and social activities that strengthen community bonds. Traditional harvest celebrations include music, dancing, and storytelling that preserve cultural knowledge while providing entertainment and social interaction. These festivals mark the successful completion of the agricultural cycle while preparing communities for the seasonal activities that will begin the cycle anew. The abundance created by successful harvest provides security that extends beyond immediate food needs. Surplus grain can be traded for manufactured goods, used to acquire livestock, or saved as reserves against future crop failures. This surplus creates the economic foundation that supports Egyptian civilization's achievements in art, architecture, and learning. Families take particular pride in harvest success that reflects the culmination of months of skilled work and careful planning. Children learn valuable lessons about the connection between effort and reward, while adults experience the deep satisfaction that comes from successful completion of work that sustains life and maintains prosperity. The harvest season also provides opportunities for young people to demonstrate their abilities and earn recognition within the community. Outstanding work during harvest can enhance a young person's reputation and improve their prospects for marriage, land ownership, or other opportunities that depend on community standing. As the intensive harvest work concludes and grain is safely stored, families can look forward to the flood season rest period that will soon arrive. The successful completion of another agricultural cycle provides confidence in their farming system while creating the abundance that will sustain them through the coming year. Chapter 7, Evening Reflections, The Wisdom of the River. As the sun begins its descent toward the western horizon, casting long golden shadows across the harvested fields of the Nile Valley, the daily rhythms of Egyptian farm life settle into the peaceful cadence of evening activities. This is the time for family gathering, community social interaction, and quiet reflection on the day's accomplishments and the larger patterns that define life along the sacred river. Katie returns from his final field inspection of the day, satisfied with the progress of crop harvesting and storage activities. His family's grain stores are filling steadily with high-quality wheat and barley that will sustain them through the coming year while providing surplus for trade and community obligations. The successful harvest represents the culmination of months of careful work and validates the traditional farming methods passed down through generations. The family gathers for their evening meal around the same low wooden table where they shared breakfast many hours earlier. The food reflects the abundance that successful farming provides: fresh bread baked from their own grain, vegetables from their garden, fish caught in the morning from the Nile, and beer brewed from barley grown in their fields. This self-sufficiency provides both material security and deep satisfaction. Nebet has prepared a special dish for tonight's meal: roasted duck seasoned with herbs from their garden and sweetened with date syrup from their palm trees. The duck was obtained through trade with village hunters who specialize in catching waterfowl from the marshes near the river. This kind of trade relationship allows families to enjoy foods they cannot produce themselves while strengthening community economic ties. Conversation during the evening meal flows easily among family members, each contributing observations about their day's activities and plans for tomorrow's work. Senab describes techniques he learned while working with experienced harvesters, showing his growing mastery of skills essential for successful farming. Enkush shares news from her work with the village women, including gossip about an upcoming marriage between young people from neighboring families. Little Iset entertains the family with stories about her day's adventures, including a detailed account of helping her grandmother tend the vegetable garden and collect eggs from their chickens. Her observations demonstrate the natural learning that happens when children participate in family activities and begin to understand the work that sustains their way of life. Grandmother Miraret contributes her perspective on the day's events, drawing connections between current activities and similar situations from her long experience. Her presence adds continuity and wisdom to family discussions while providing the children with connection to their family's history and traditional knowledge. The family's evening conversation reflects the Egyptian appreciation for discussion and shared decision-making that characterizes successful farming operations. Major decisions are made through family consultation that takes into account everyone's observations and concerns. This participatory approach ensures that family members feel invested in outcomes while taking advantage of collective wisdom and experience. As the meal concludes and cooking utensils are cleaned and stored, the family transitions to evening activities that provide relaxation and entertainment after the day's work. These activities vary with seasons, weather, and family circumstances, but always include time for social interaction and cultural activities that maintain community bonds. Tonight, several neighboring families gather in the courtyard area between their houses for an evening of music and storytelling. Amenemheb brings his wooden flute, while Hori contributes a small drum made from pottery and animal hide. Their music creates a gentle soundtrack for conversations and activities that continue until bedtime. The children play quiet games appropriate for evening activities, while adults discuss community affairs, share farming observations, and plan cooperative activities. Young people have opportunities to interact with potential marriage partners in supervised social settings that allow relationships to develop gradually and appropriately. Elder villagers share traditional stories that preserve cultural knowledge while providing entertainment and moral instruction. These stories often feature farming themes and teach lessons about the importance of hard work, cooperation, and respect for the natural forces that control agricultural success. One of tonight's stories tells about a farmer who became lazy and neglected his irrigation channels, resulting in crop failure and family hardship. The story's moral message emphasizes the importance of consistent effort and attention to detail in farming activities. Children listen intently to these stories, absorbing lessons that will guide their future behavior. Another story describes a village that worked together to overcome a difficult flood year, sharing resources and labor to ensure that everyone survived until better conditions returned. This story reinforces the value of community cooperation while providing reassurance that collective action can overcome individual hardships. The storytelling tradition serves multiple purposes in Egyptian village life. Stories preserve historical knowledge about successful farming techniques, weather patterns, and community responses to various challenges. They maintain cultural values and social norms while providing entertainment that strengthens community bonds. As evening progresses and stars begin to appear in the clear desert sky, families prepare for the night's rest. Children are settled onto their sleeping mats, often accompanied by quiet songs or gentle stories that help them transition from the day's activities to peaceful sleep. Adults take time for personal reflection and spiritual observance before retiring. Many families maintain small household shrines where they offer prayers of gratitude for the day's blessings and request protection and guidance for future activities. These personal religious observances complement the community religious activities that mark seasonal celebrations and life transitions. Katie steps outside for a final look at his fields and the river that sustains his family's prosperity. The Nile flows peacefully in the starlight, its surface reflecting points of light from the clear sky above. The sight brings deep contentment and connection to the natural forces that make Egyptian civilization possible. The seasonal cycle is beginning to turn again toward flood season, when rising waters will inundate the harvested fields and begin the annual renewal that has sustained Egyptian agriculture for thousands of years. This cyclical pattern provides both security and meaning to farming families who understand their place in the larger rhythms of natural and cosmic order. Standing in the gentle night air, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of his sleeping village, Katie reflects on the satisfaction that comes from work that connects him directly to the fundamental processes of life and growth. His family's prosperity results from their skill in cooperating with natural forces rather than fighting against them, and this harmony creates a sense of rightness that defines Egyptian agricultural culture. The night sky above displays the same stars that guided his ancestors in planning their farming activities and aligning their lives with cosmic rhythms. Egyptian farmers developed sophisticated understanding of stellar patterns and their relationship to seasonal changes, creating a calendar system that ensures optimal timing for all agricultural activities. The constellation patterns visible tonight tell Katie that flood season is approaching and that he should begin preparing for the cycle of activities that will soon begin again. This traditional astronomical knowledge provides precise guidance for farming decisions while connecting daily work to the larger patterns of cosmic order. As he returns to his house and prepares for sleep, Katie experiences the deep contentment that comes from a life lived in harmony with natural rhythms and family responsibilities. His work provides not just material prosperity but spiritual satisfaction that comes from participating in the renewal and abundance that sustains all life. The peaceful end to another successful day in the Nile Valley reflects the stability and sustainability of the agricultural system that has supported Egyptian civilization for thousands of years. Individual families like Katie's create the foundation of prosperity that allows their culture to achieve greatness in art, architecture, and learning while maintaining the human values that make life meaningful and satisfying. Chapter 8: Seasonal Cycles, the River's Eternal Rhythm. The ancient Egyptians organized their lives around the eternal rhythm of the Nile's seasonal cycles, understanding that prosperity and security came from working in harmony with natural patterns rather than fighting against them. As our peaceful journey through their world continues, we explore how these seasonal cycles created a way of life that sustained one of history's greatest civilizations for over 3,000 years. The Egyptian year consisted of 3 seasons, each lasting 4 months and corresponding to the river's natural behavior. Ake, the season of inundation, began when the flood waters rose and covered the farmland with life-giving silt. Parate, the growing season, started when the waters receded and crops could be planted in the fertile mud. Shimu, the harvest season, arrived when grain reached maturity and families gathered their crops before the cycle began anew. This 3-season calendar reflected deep understanding of the relationship between celestial events and earthly conditions. Egyptian astronomers observed that the annual flood coincided with the heliacal rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky, which they called Sopdet. This astronomical marker allowed precise prediction of flood timing, enabling farmers to prepare for seasonal activities well in advance. Katie's family has lived by this seasonal rhythm for countless generations, each year following patterns established by centuries of accumulated wisdom. Their prosperity depends not on fighting natural forces but on understanding and cooperating with cycles that bring both challenges and opportunities in predictable sequence. The transition from harvest season to flood season brings a dramatic change in the landscape and daily activities. The golden fields of ripe grain give way to vast sheets of brown water that transform the valley into an enormous lake stretching from the river's normal channel to the base of the desert cliffs. This transformation might seem destructive to outsiders, but to Egyptian farmers it represents the foundation of their prosperity. During the flood season, when their fields lie under water, farming families engage in activities that prepare for the coming growing season while maintaining their equipment and skills. This is the time for repairing tools, constructing new irrigation channels, and undertaking construction projects that cannot be completed during busy planting and harvest periods. The flood season also provides opportunities for education and cultural activities that enrich family and community life. Children receive more formal instruction in reading, writing, and arithmetic during these months when adults have more time to devote to teaching. Craftsmen use the season to perfect their skills and create the tools and household items needed for the coming year. Religious observances and cultural celebrations are particularly important during flood season, when communities have time to focus on spiritual and social activities that strengthen cultural identity and community bonds. These celebrations often commemorate the agricultural cycle while asking for divine blessing on the coming growing season. The transition from flood to growing season requires intense preparation and perfect timing. As flood waters begin to recede, families must be ready to begin planting activities within the narrow window when soil conditions are optimal. Too early, and seeds will rot in waterlogged soil. Too late, and the soil will become too dry for successful germination. Katie and his neighbors spend considerable time during late flood season preparing seeds, checking and repairing irrigation equipment, and planning the distribution of crops across their fields. These preparations must be completed before planting begins because there will be no time for major adjustments once the growing season starts. The selection and treatment of seed grain represents one of the most critical aspects of seasonal preparation. Families carefully choose seeds from their best-performing plants of the previous year, ensuring genetic continuity while gradually improving crop characteristics through selective breeding. Seeds are inspected grain by grain to eliminate any that show signs of damage or disease. Seed treatment techniques protect young plants from diseases and pests that might prevent successful germination. Some seeds are soaked in herbal solutions that provide protection against fungal infections. Others are mixed with aromatic substances that discourage insects. These traditional treatments reflect centuries of experimentation and observation about plant health and protection. The actual planting period creates intense activity throughout farming communities as families work to complete their seeding within optimal timing windows. Weather conditions must be monitored constantly, and planting plans adjusted to take advantage of favorable moisture and temperature conditions while avoiding periods that might damage young crops. Irrigation management during the growing season requires sophisticated understanding of plant water requirements at different growth stages. Young seedlings need consistent moisture to establish strong root systems, while mature plants require careful water management to prevent disease and optimize grain production. Too much water at the wrong time can be as damaging as too little water. The Shadif irrigation system allows precise water control that matches plant needs throughout the growing season. Katie and Senab operate their Shadif according to carefully planned schedules that provide optimal moisture while conserving precious water resources. This work requires constant attention and adjustment as crop needs change and weather conditions vary. Pest and disease management represents another crucial aspect of successful crop production. Egyptian farmers developed sophisticated understanding of the insects, diseases, and other problems that can damage crops at different growth stages. They learned to identify problems early and apply appropriate treatments before minor issues become major disasters. Traditional pest control methods rely on natural substances and biological controls rather than harmful chemicals unknown to ancient civilizations. Farmers use companion planting techniques that discourage harmful insects while attracting beneficial species. They employ crop rotation strategies that break disease and pest cycles by changing growing conditions from year to year. The growing season gradually transforms the landscape from brown mud to green fields to golden grain as crops progress through their life cycles. This visual transformation provides daily evidence of successful farming while creating one of the world's most beautiful agricultural landscapes. The sight of healthy crops growing toward maturity brings deep satisfaction to farming families who have invested months of careful work in their cultivation. Wildlife management during the growing season requires balancing crop protection with ecological relationships that benefit agriculture overall. Birds can damage crops by eating grain, but they also control insects that might cause greater damage. Farmers use various techniques to discourage crop damage while maintaining beneficial relationships with wildlife species. Traditional bird control methods include scarecrows, noisemakers, and physical barriers that protect crops without harming bird populations. Children often help with bird control by walking through fields and making noise that discourages feeding flocks. These activities provide useful work for young family members while contributing to crop protection. The transition from growing season to harvest season brings renewed intensity as families prepare for the crucial work of gathering and storing their crops. Harvest timing requires careful judgment based on crop maturity, weather conditions, and storage preparation. Mistakes during harvest can result in significant losses that affect family welfare throughout the coming year. Harvest preparation includes readying tools, organizing labor, and preparing storage facilities to receive the new crop. Families coordinate their harvest activities with neighbors to ensure adequate labor while maintaining social relationships that provide security and support during challenging times. The successful completion of another seasonal cycle brings deep satisfaction and confidence in the agricultural system that sustains Egyptian civilization. Families celebrate their achievements while preparing for the flood season rest period that will soon begin the eternal cycle anew. This cyclical pattern provides both stability and meaning to farming families who understand their place in natural rhythms larger than individual lives. The seasonal cycle connects daily work to cosmic patterns while providing the material foundation that supports one of history's greatest civilizations. The wisdom embedded in Egyptian seasonal practices offers lessons that remain relevant today about sustainable agriculture, community cooperation, and living in harmony with natural systems. Their success demonstrates that human prosperity depends not on dominating nature but on understanding and cooperating with natural forces that ultimately control the conditions for life and growth. Chapter 9: Family Bonds, Generations Along the Nile. The strength of Egyptian agricultural civilization rested not just on farming techniques and irrigation systems, but on the deep family bonds that provided stability, continuity, and meaning to daily life along the Nile. In the gentle evening light of another peaceful day in Mennefer, we explore how these family relationships created the social foundation that sustained Egyptian culture for thousands of years. The Egyptian family structure encompassed multiple generations living together in cooperative households that shared resources, knowledge, and responsibilities. Katie's household includes not just his immediate family but his elderly mother Mirret, whose presence adds wisdom and continuity to daily life. This multi-generational arrangement provides security for elderly family members while ensuring that traditional knowledge passes smoothly to younger generations. Grandmother Meret's role in the family extends far beyond simple residence. At 72 years old, she represents a living link to previous generations and serves as keeper of family traditions, stories, and specialized knowledge accumulated over decades of experience. Her presence provides stability and perspective that help the family navigate challenges while maintaining connections to their cultural heritage. The relationship between Katie and his mother reflects the Egyptian value system that emphasizes respect for elders and appreciation for their contributions to family welfare. Despite her advanced age, Mirret continues to contribute meaningful work to household activities through her management of the family garden, her skill in food preparation and preservation, and her knowledge of herbal medicines that keep the family healthy. Meret's morning routine begins before dawn as she tends the small vegetable garden behind the family house. Her experienced hands know exactly how to nurture the onions, leeks, lettuce, and herbs that supplement the family's grain-based diet. The garden produces year-round under her careful management, providing fresh vegetables even during seasons when such foods are scarce in the broader community. The relationship between Katie and his wife Nebet demonstrates the partnership model that characterizes successful Egyptian farm families. While certain tasks are typically performed by men or women, the overall family operation depends on close cooperation between husband and wife in planning, decision-making, and day-to-day management of household and farming activities. Nebet's contributions to family prosperity extend far beyond conventional domestic tasks. Her skills in textile production create valuable goods that can be traded for items the family cannot produce themselves. Her management of food preparation and preservation ensures that the family's nutrition remains optimal throughout seasonal variations in food availability. Her knowledge of household economics guides decisions about resource allocation and long-term planning. The partnership between Katie and Nebet involves constant communication and shared decision-making about farming operations, family finances, and children's education. This collaborative approach ensures that family decisions benefit from both perspectives while maintaining the harmony essential for successful household management. Their eldest son Seneb, now 16 years old, occupies a crucial position in the family structure as the designated heir who will eventually inherit responsibility for the family's land and agricultural operations. His education combines practical farming instruction with broader cultural knowledge that will prepare him for adult responsibilities in family and community leadership. Seneb's daily activities include working alongside his father in field operations, learning the subtle skills required for successful crop production, and gradually assuming greater responsibility for independent decision-making. This apprenticeship system ensures that traditional farming knowledge passes accurately from generation to generation while allowing young people to develop confidence in their abilities. The relationship between Katie and Seneb reflects the Egyptian emphasis on patient instruction and gradual assumption of responsibility. Rather than simply ordering his son to perform tasks, Katie explains the reasoning behind farming decisions and encourages Seneb to ask questions and propose alternatives. This educational approach develops critical thinking skills while building the strong relationship between father and son that will sustain family continuity. 13-year-old Enku occupies a different but equally important position in the family structure. As the eldest daughter, she learns household management skills from her mother and grandmother while contributing significantly to family welfare through her daily work. Her education prepares her for future marriage while ensuring that she can contribute effectively to her natal family's prosperity. Enku's relationship with her mother Nebet involves learning the complex skills required for successful household management in an agricultural setting. She masters food preparation techniques, textile production methods, and the sophisticated knowledge of seasonal planning that enables families to maintain prosperity throughout the year's changing conditions. The youngest child, 8-year-old Iset, represents the family's future and receives the loving attention of all family members. Her education occurs through observation and gradual participation in family activities, allowing her to absorb cultural knowledge naturally while developing the skills and values that will guide her adult life. Iset's relationship with her grandmother Mirret is particularly close, as elderly family members often take special responsibility for educating the youngest children. This relationship provides Iset with direct connection to family traditions while giving Mirret meaningful work that contributes to family continuity and cultural preservation. The evening meal serves as the primary time for family communication and bonding. Around the low wooden table where they gather each evening, family members share observations about their daily activities, discuss plans for future work, and maintain the emotional connections that sustain family unity through both prosperity and hardship. Family conversations during evening meals reflect the Egyptian appreciation for discussion and shared decision-making. Children are encouraged to contribute their observations and ask questions, while adults share their knowledge and experience in ways that promote learning and understanding. These discussions help maintain family harmony while ensuring that everyone understands their roles and responsibilities. Religious observances provide another important focus for family bonding and cultural transmission. The family maintains a small shrine in their home where they offer prayers of gratitude and request divine blessing on their activities. These observances strengthen family bonds while connecting daily life to spiritual values and cosmic patterns. Family religious practices include seasonal celebrations that mark important transitions in the agricultural cycle, life passages that commemorate births, marriages, and deaths, and regular observances that maintain spiritual connections throughout the year. These activities provide meaning and context for family life while strengthening cultural identity. The extended family network extends beyond the immediate household to include relatives throughout the village and region. Marriage relationships create bonds between families that provide mutual support during difficult times while expanding the social and economic resources available to all members of the kinship network. Katie's relationships with his brothers, who live in nearby villages, involve regular communication about farming conditions, market opportunities, and family news. These relationships provide valuable information exchange while maintaining emotional bonds that strengthen family security and cultural continuity. Marriage customs in Egyptian farming communities emphasize compatibility and mutual benefit rather than romantic attraction alone. Families carefully consider potential marriages based on factors like farming skills, family reputation, economic resources, and personal character. These practical considerations ensure that marriages contribute to family prosperity while providing personal satisfaction for the married couple. The upcoming marriage of a young woman in a neighboring family provides an example of how marriage celebrations strengthen community bonds while marking important life transitions. The celebration will involve the entire village in festivities that demonstrate community support for the new family while providing entertainment and social interaction for all participants. Children's education within the family structure combines practical skill development with cultural transmission and character formation. Children learn by observing and gradually participating in adult activities, absorbing knowledge naturally through daily experience while receiving explicit instruction in specialized skills and cultural values. The educational process varies according to children's ages, abilities, and family circumstances, but always emphasizes practical skills that will contribute to family prosperity. Boys typically receive more instruction in farming techniques and community leadership, while girls focus more on household management and textile production, though both receive basic knowledge in all areas essential for adult success. Family discipline emphasizes guidance and instruction rather than punishment, with parents using explanation and encouragement to shape children's behavior. This approach develops self-discipline and good judgment while maintaining positive relationships between parents and children throughout their lives. The family's economic planning involves all adult members in decisions about resource allocation, investment priorities, and long-term strategies for maintaining prosperity. These discussions ensure that family decisions benefit from collective wisdom while maintaining transparency about family finances and future prospects. Family leisure activities provide relaxation and entertainment that strengthen emotional bonds while preserving cultural traditions. Evening storytelling, music, and games create positive shared experiences that enhance family unity while transmitting cultural knowledge and values to younger generations. The family's response to challenges demonstrates the resilience that comes from strong relationships and shared commitment to mutual welfare. When problems arise, whether from weather, illness, or other difficulties, family members work together to find solutions while providing emotional support that helps everyone cope with stress and uncertainty. Seasonal variations in family activities reflect the agricultural cycle while providing variety that prevents routine from becoming monotonous. Flood season brings opportunities for extended family interaction and cultural activities, while growing and harvest seasons focus more intensively on agricultural work but still maintain family bonds through shared labor and common goals. The family's connections to their ancestral land provide both material security and spiritual meaning that transcends individual lifetimes. The knowledge that their land has supported their family for generations, and will continue to support future generations, creates a sense of permanence and purpose that enriches daily life while motivating excellent stewardship of natural resources. Family traditions surrounding agricultural activities connect current work to previous generations while ensuring that essential knowledge and skills pass accurately to future generations. These traditions provide continuity and meaning while adapting gradually to changing conditions and new opportunities. The love and mutual respect evident in family relationships create the emotional foundation that makes family cooperation possible while providing the personal satisfaction that makes daily work meaningful and rewarding. This emotional dimension of family life represents perhaps the most important factor in the long-term success of Egyptian agricultural civilization. Chapter 10: Wisdom of the Ancestors, Traditional Knowledge. In the quiet hours after sunset, when the Nile Valley settles into peaceful evening rhythms, the most precious treasures of Egyptian civilization are shared through the gentle transmission of traditional knowledge from elders to younger generations. This wisdom, accumulated over thousands of years of patient observation and careful experimentation, forms the foundation of agricultural success that has sustained Egyptian families along the sacred river since the beginning of recorded history. Grandmother Mererit's role as keeper of family wisdom extends far beyond her daily contributions to household activities. As the eldest family member, she carries within her memory decades of accumulated knowledge about farming techniques, weather patterns, plant and animal behavior, and the countless subtle observations that distinguish successful farmers from those who merely survive. Tonight, as the family gathers in their courtyard under the brilliant stars of the desert sky, Mereret shares knowledge that cannot be found in any written text but exists only in the living memory of those who have spent lifetimes learning to read the subtle signs that nature provides to careful observers. Watch the behavior of birds during flood season, she tells young Iset, who sits beside her grandmother with the rapt attention that children reserve for stories that blend entertainment with practical wisdom. When the ibis begin to gather in large flocks near the river's edge, the flood has reached its peak and will soon begin to recede. When they scatter to feed in the shallow water spreading across our fields, we know it is time to begin preparing our tools for the planting season. This kind of detailed observation represents the foundation of traditional knowledge that enables Egyptian farmers to time their activities with precision that ensures optimal results. Modern meteorological services cannot provide more accurate seasonal predictions than those available to farmers who have learned to interpret the natural signs that indicate changing conditions. Senab listens intently as his grandmother describes the subtle differences in soil color and texture that indicate optimal planting conditions. Dark soil that holds together when squeezed but crumbles easily when rubbed between your fingers is ready for grain crops, she explains. Soil that is too light in color lacks sufficient fertility from flood-deposited silt. Soil that is too dark and sticky contains too much moisture and will cause seeds to rot before they can germinate. These traditional soil assessment techniques require no instruments beyond experienced hands and trained eyes, yet they provide information essential for successful crop production. The knowledge represents generations of accumulated observation about the relationships between soil conditions and crop performance under Egyptian growing conditions. The traditional knowledge encompasses not just farming techniques but sophisticated understanding of plant and animal behavior that helps farmers work in harmony with natural systems. Mereret describes how certain weeds indicate soil fertility levels, how insect behavior predicts weather changes, and how the timing of various natural events provides guidance for optimal scheduling of farming activities. The tamarisk trees along the river's edge will begin to flower when soil temperatures reach optimal levels for grain germination, she tells Senab. Watch for the first yellow blooms, and you will know that planting conditions are perfect. Plant too early, before the tamarisk flowers appear, and your seeds may fail to germinate properly. Plant too late, after the blooms have faded, and your crops will mature during the hottest part of the season when grain quality suffers. This phenological knowledge, the understanding of seasonal natural events and their relationships to farming activities, provides remarkably precise guidance for agricultural timing. Traditional farmers throughout the world have developed similar systems, but Egyptian farmers refined their observations over more generations than any other agricultural civilization, creating perhaps the most sophisticated traditional farming system ever developed. The astronomical knowledge integrated into Egyptian agricultural practice reflects their understanding that earthly activities must be coordinated with celestial rhythms for optimal success. Mirret points out constellations that mark important seasonal transitions and explains how star positions provide guidance for planning farming activities months in advance. "See the bright star rising there above the eastern horizon?" she asks, directing the family's attention to Sirius, which the Egyptians called Sopdet. When Sopdet rises before dawn at this time of year, the flood season has begun and we can expect the waters to reach their peak in 40 days. When Sopdet rises at midnight, we know that harvest season is approaching and we must prepare our tools for cutting grain. This stellar calendar provided Egyptian farmers with precise timing for seasonal activities while connecting their daily work to the cosmic rhythms that govern all natural processes. The knowledge required careful observation and record-keeping over many generations to establish the relationships between stellar positions and optimal timing for agricultural activities. Traditional knowledge also includes sophisticated understanding of crop varieties and their specific requirements for successful production. Egyptian farmers developed numerous varieties of wheat, barley, and other crops adapted to different growing conditions and seasonal timing. Mirret describes the characteristics that distinguish different grain varieties and explains how to select appropriate varieties for specific field conditions. The red wheat grows best in higher fields that drain quickly after flood season, she explains to Anku, who will need this knowledge when she manages her own household. The white wheat produces higher yields in lower fields that retain moisture longer, but it must be harvested quickly once it matures or the grain will shatter and fall to the ground. This varietal knowledge represents centuries of careful selection and breeding that gradually improved crop performance while adapting varieties to local growing conditions. Traditional farmers were sophisticated plant breeders who understood principles of heredity and selection long before these concepts were formally described by scientists. The traditional knowledge includes detailed understanding of pest and disease management using natural methods that work in harmony with ecological relationships rather than disrupting them. Mirret describes herbal preparations that protect crops from insects, companion planting techniques that discourage harmful pests while attracting beneficial species, and crop rotation strategies that break disease cycles. Garlic planted among the grain crops will discourage many insects that feed on young seedlings, she tells Senab. Coriander flowers attract beneficial insects that prey on aphids and other crop pests. Fenugreek planted after grain crops will restore soil fertility while providing valuable food and medicine for our family. These integrated pest management techniques require sophisticated understanding of ecological relationships and careful timing for optimal effectiveness. Traditional farmers were skilled ecologists who understood complex natural systems and knew how to work with natural forces to achieve desired results. Traditional knowledge encompasses not just agricultural techniques but also the social customs and community practices that make cooperative farming possible. Mirret describes the proper etiquette for labor sharing, the traditional methods for resolving disputes over water rights, and the community obligations that ensure mutual support during difficult times. When neighbors help with your harvest, you must provide food and drink that reflects the value of their labor, she explains. Good beer, fresh bread, and roasted meat show proper respect for their assistance and ensure that they will be willing to help again when you need their labor. These social protocols maintain the cooperative relationships that enable communities to accomplish tasks beyond the capability of individual families while ensuring fair distribution of benefits and obligations. The knowledge represents generations of experience in managing complex social relationships essential for agricultural success. The traditional medical knowledge that Mirret possesses includes sophisticated understanding of herbal medicines and healing techniques that keep families healthy without dependence on professional medical services that may not be available in rural communities. She describes medicinal uses for common plants and explains how to prepare treatments for various ailments. Willow bark tea reduces fever and relieves pain from injuries, she tells Nebet, passing on knowledge that will help her care for her family's health. Honey mixed with onion juice soothes coughs and throat irritation. Garlic eaten regularly prevents many diseases and promotes overall health and strength. This medical knowledge represents careful observation of plant properties and their effects on human health, accumulated over generations of experience treating common ailments with natural remedies. Traditional healers were skilled pharmacologists who understood principles of dosage, preparation, and treatment that remain valid today. Traditional knowledge also includes sophisticated understanding of food preservation and storage techniques that ensure food security throughout seasonal variations in food availability. Mirret describes methods for drying, fermenting, and otherwise preserving foods that allow families to maintain adequate nutrition even during difficult periods. Grain must be completely dry before storage to prevent spoilage from mold and insects, she explains to Anku. Test the dryness by biting a few grains. Properly dried grain will crack between your teeth rather than compressing. Store dried grain in sealed containers with bay leaves and other aromatic herbs that discourage insect infestation. These food preservation techniques require precise understanding of moisture levels, temperature control, and the use of natural preservatives that prevent spoilage without harmful side effects. Traditional food preservation was sophisticated food science that ensured food security for agricultural families. The traditional knowledge encompasses spiritual and religious practices that connect farming activities to larger meanings and purposes beyond material prosperity. Mirret explains the proper observances for seasonal festivals, the traditional offerings that honor deities associated with agriculture, and the prayers and rituals that seek divine blessing on farming activities. We offer the first fruits of our harvest to thank the gods for their blessings and to request their continued favor, she tells little Iset. This practice reminds us that our prosperity depends not just on our own efforts but on forces larger than ourselves that control the weather, the flood, and all the conditions necessary for successful farming. These spiritual practices provide meaning and context for daily work while maintaining humility about human limitations and dependence on natural forces beyond human control. Traditional religion integrated farming activities into cosmic and spiritual frameworks that enriched daily life with deeper significance. The transmission of traditional knowledge requires not just verbal instruction but careful demonstration and supervised practice that ensures accurate transfer of complex skills and techniques. Mirret works with each family member to ensure that they understand not just what to do but why traditional practices work and how to adapt them to changing conditions. This educational process emphasizes understanding principles rather than merely following rules, enabling younger generations to apply traditional knowledge creatively while maintaining its essential effectiveness. The approach develops judgment and adaptation skills that enable traditional knowledge to remain relevant across changing circumstances. As the evening progresses and family members prepare for sleep, the sharing of traditional knowledge creates bonds between generations while ensuring that essential wisdom passes accurately to those who will need it in the future. This knowledge represents one of humanity's great achievements, the development of sustainable agricultural practices that support prosperity while maintaining harmony with natural systems. Chapter 11: The Sacred River, Spiritual Life Along the Nile. The relationship between Egyptian farmers and the Nile River extends far beyond practical considerations of irrigation and transportation to encompass deep spiritual connections that infuse daily life with sacred meaning. As we continue our peaceful journey through ancient Egyptian agricultural life, we discover how religious beliefs and practices created a framework of meaning that transformed everyday farming activities into participation in cosmic order and divine purpose. The Nile River itself is revered as a manifestation of divine power, personified as the god Hapi, whose annual flood brings life and abundance to the Egyptian valley. Hapi is depicted as a well-nourished figure with prominent breasts, symbolizing the nurturing abundance that the flood provides to farming families throughout Egypt. This personification helps farmers maintain awareness of the sacred nature of the natural forces that sustain their civilization. Every morning, as Katie conducts his inspection of fields and irrigation channels, he offers quiet prayers of gratitude to Hapi for the continuing blessing of adequate water for his crops. These prayers are not formal religious ceremonies but spontaneous expressions of appreciation that acknowledge his dependence on forces larger than human control. Great Hapi, provider of life and abundance, Katie whispers as he checks the water level in his main irrigation channel, "We thank you for the blessing of water that brings fertility to our fields and prosperity to our families. Grant us wisdom to use your gifts well and ensure that our farming serves the greater good of our community and our land." These daily prayers create a spiritual framework that transforms routine farming activities into acts of religious devotion. The practice maintains awareness of divine presence in everyday life while fostering the humility and gratitude that characterize successful farmers who understand their dependence on natural forces beyond human control. The seasonal festivals that mark important transitions in the agricultural cycle provide opportunities for community religious celebration that strengthens both spiritual bonds and social relationships. The Festival of the Flood celebrates the beginning of inundation season with ceremonies that honor Hapi while requesting divine blessing on the coming flood and the agricultural activities it makes possible. The entire village participates in flood festival celebrations, gathering at the small temple that serves their community for ceremonies that combine religious observance with social festivities. Families bring offerings of food, flowers, and incense to demonstrate their gratitude for past blessings while requesting continued divine favor for their farming activities. The temple itself reflects the integration of religious practice with agricultural life. Built of mud brick like the farmers' houses, it occupies a central location in the village where it serves as a focal point for community gatherings and religious observances. The temple's simple design emphasizes accessibility and community participation rather than elaborate decoration or impressive architecture. The village priest, a farmer like his neighbors who has received additional training in religious knowledge and ceremonial practices, leads the community in prayers and rituals that maintain their spiritual connections while providing guidance for ethical behavior and community cooperation. His dual role as farmer and priest ensures that religious instruction remains relevant to the practical challenges of agricultural life. Religious instruction emphasizes the moral obligations that accompany agricultural prosperity, teaching that divine blessing creates responsibility for sharing abundance with those in need while maintaining environmental stewardship that ensures continued productivity of the land. These teachings provide ethical framework for farming practices while encouraging community cooperation and social responsibility. The concept of Ma'at, divine order, truth, and justice, permeates Egyptian agricultural culture and provides principles that guide both individual behavior and community organization. Ma'at represents the cosmic balance that maintains harmony between human activities and natural forces, ensuring that agricultural practices support rather than disrupt the natural systems that sustain life. Farming practices that honor Ma'at include sustainable cultivation techniques that maintain soil fertility, irrigation methods that share water resources fairly among community members, and labor practices that provide adequate compensation for work while ensuring that everyone has opportunity to contribute to community prosperity according to their abilities. The judgment of Ma'at extends to personal behavior as well as agricultural practices, encouraging honesty in business dealings, fairness in labor relationships, and generosity toward those who face hardship through no fault of their own. These ethical principles create social stability that enables agricultural communities to function effectively while maintaining justice and mutual support among community members. Religious beliefs about the afterlife provide additional motivation for ethical behavior while offering comfort during times of loss and uncertainty. Egyptian farmers believe that their treatment of land, animals, and fellow human beings will be evaluated after death, with favorable judgment depending on adherence to principles of Ma'at throughout their earthly lives. This belief system encourages long-term thinking about the consequences of farming practices while promoting stewardship behavior that maintains the land's productivity for future generations. Farmers understand that their responsibility extends beyond immediate personal prosperity to include environmental care that ensures continued abundance for their children and grandchildren. The personification of natural forces as deities helps farmers maintain awareness of the complex ecological relationships that sustain agricultural productivity. Renanutut, the goddess of harvest and granaries, receives particular veneration from farming families who depend on successful grain production for their survival and prosperity. Renanutut is often depicted as a cobra-headed woman who protects stored grain from vermin and ensures that family food supplies remain adequate throughout the year. Her worship includes rituals performed at harvest time and during grain storage activities that seek divine protection for the crops that represent families' investment of labor and hope throughout the growing season. The goddess Isis receives reverence as the divine mother who taught humanity the arts of agriculture and civilization, transforming nomadic peoples into settled farmers capable of supporting complex societies. Her worship emphasizes the nurturing aspects of agricultural life while honoring the knowledge and skills that make farming possible. Religious festivals honoring Isis include ceremonies that celebrate the gifts of agricultural knowledge while requesting divine guidance for farming decisions and community leadership. These observances strengthen cultural identity while providing opportunities for education and social interaction that maintain community bonds. Seasonal religious observances follow the agricultural calendar and provide spiritual framework for the annual cycle of farming activities. The festival of planting blesses the seeds that will become next season's crops while requesting divine favor for optimal growing conditions. The festival of first fruits celebrates the earliest harvest while expressing gratitude for agricultural abundance. These festivals create rhythm and meaning in agricultural life while providing regular opportunities for community gathering and social interaction. The celebrations include music, dancing, storytelling, and shared meals that strengthen cultural bonds while maintaining traditions that connect current farming practices to ancestral wisdom and divine blessing. Personal religious practices include daily prayers, household shrines, and individual acts of devotion that maintain spiritual awareness throughout routine farming activities. Many farmers maintain small shrines in their homes where they offer prayers and small sacrifices that acknowledge divine presence in their daily lives. These household religious practices typically involve the entire family and provide opportunities for spiritual education that helps children develop the moral framework that will guide their adult behavior. Parents use religious instruction to teach ethical principles while explaining how spiritual beliefs relate to practical farming activities. The integration of religious belief with agricultural practice creates meaning that transforms necessary work into spiritual activity that serves divine purposes while providing material prosperity. This spiritual dimension of farming life helps explain the satisfaction and contentment that characterizes successful Egyptian agricultural communities. Religious beliefs about divine providence provide comfort during difficult times while encouraging perseverance in the face of challenges that might otherwise seem overwhelming. Farmers who understand their work as service to divine purposes maintain hope and determination even when weather, pests, or other problems threaten their prosperity. The community religious life provides social support systems that help families cope with hardships while celebrating successes in ways that strengthen community bonds and cultural continuity. Religious observances create shared experiences that unite community members while providing framework for mutual assistance during difficult times. Prayer and ritual practices provide techniques for managing anxiety and stress while maintaining focus on long-term goals rather than short-term difficulties. The spiritual practices help farmers maintain perspective about the challenges and rewards of agricultural life while developing inner resources that support resilience and adaptability. The sacred nature of agricultural work provides motivation for excellence while encouraging the patience and persistence required for long-term farming success. Farmers who view their work as religious service maintain high standards for crop care while developing the dedication needed to sustain productivity over many seasons. As night settles over the Nile Valley and families prepare for sleep, the spiritual dimension of Egyptian agricultural life provides peace and contentment that comes from work performed in harmony with divine will and natural order. This spiritual framework transforms daily farming activities into participation in cosmic purposes that give meaning and direction to individual lives while supporting the collective prosperity that sustains Egyptian civilization. Chapter 12: Peaceful Dreams, Rest Along the Sacred River. As our gentle journey through the timeless world of ancient Egyptian farming draws toward its peaceful conclusion, the soft sounds of night settle over the Nile Valley like a familiar blanket of comfort and security. The day's work is complete, tools are cleaned and stored, and families throughout the village of Mennefer prepare for the restorative sleep that will renew their strength for tomorrow's continuation of the eternal cycle of agricultural life. In Katie's household, the evening routines that have structured family life for generations begin their familiar pattern. Oil lamps cast gentle, flickering light on mud brick walls decorated with simple but beautiful painted designs that reflect the family's prosperity and artistic sensibilities. The warm glow creates an atmosphere of peace and contentment that signals the transition from active work to restful relaxation. Nebet completes her final household tasks of the day, ensuring that cooking fires are properly banked to provide coals for tomorrow's bread baking while eliminating any risk of accidental burning. The family's water jars are checked and refilled as needed, grain containers are sealed against insects and moisture, and tools and equipment are secured in their proper places. These evening routines represent more than mere household management. They embody the careful attention to detail that enables farming families to maintain prosperity and security through consistent application of proven practices. The routines create order and predictability that support family harmony while ensuring that important tasks are completed reliably. Children's bedtime preparations include gentle washing with cool water from the family well, followed by the comfortable ritual of settling onto their woven sleeping mats arranged on the cool floor of their sleeping chamber. The mats, created by Nebet during previous winter seasons, provide comfortable sleeping surfaces that remain cool during hot nights while offering adequate padding for restful sleep. 8-year-old Iset's bedtime routine includes quiet conversation with her grandmother Mirret, who shares gentle stories that blend entertainment with moral instruction. Tonight's story tells of a young girl who learned patience and persistence by watching her grandmother tend a difficult garden during a challenging growing season, eventually mastering the skills that enabled her to create abundance from seemingly impossible conditions. "Remember, little one," Mirret whispers as Iset's eyes grow heavy with approaching sleep, "the river teaches us that persistence and patience create miracles. Water that flows gently but continuously can carve channels through solid rock, just as daily effort in farming creates abundance that seems impossible when we look only at single days of work." These bedtime stories serve multiple purposes in Egyptian family life, providing entertainment that helps children transition to sleep while transmitting cultural values and practical wisdom that will guide their future behavior. The stories often feature agricultural themes that help children understand their place in the larger patterns of family and community life. 13-year-old Anku settles onto her sleeping mat with quiet satisfaction about her day's contributions to family welfare. Her work with food preparation, textile production, and household management has provided tangible evidence of her growing capabilities while preparing her for the adult responsibilities she will assume in the coming years. 16-year-old Senab reviews the day's farming lessons in his mind as he prepares for sleep, consolidating the knowledge and skills his father shared during their work together in the fields. His growing mastery of agricultural techniques fills him with pride while creating confidence about his ability to manage family farming operations successfully when that responsibility becomes his. The parents' evening conversation includes quiet discussion of tomorrow's plans, evaluation of current farming activities, and gentle sharing of concerns and satisfactions about family life and community relationships. These conversations maintain the communication essential for successful partnership while providing opportunities for mutual support and encouragement. Katie's final activity of the day involves a brief walk outside to observe the night sky and check on the peaceful sounds of the village settling into sleep. The familiar sounds of domestic animals, the gentle flow of irrigation water, and the distant calls of night birds create a symphony of security that confirms the successful completion of another day in their timeless agricultural cycle. The stars overhead display the same patterns that guided Katie's ancestors in timing their farming activities and understanding their place in cosmic order. The sight of familiar constellations provides continuity and perspective that connects daily work to larger patterns while offering guidance for future planning and decision-making. The night air carries the mingled fragrances that define life along the Nile, the earthy scent of irrigated soil, the sweet fragrance of date palm flowers, the subtle aroma of wood smoke from cooking fires, and the fresh smell of river water flowing peacefully toward the distant Mediterranean Sea. These familiar scents create powerful associations with security, prosperity, and the deep satisfaction that comes from work performed in harmony with natural rhythms and family traditions. The sensory experience of night along the Nile provides comfort and reassurance that reinforce the emotional bonds connecting farmers to their land and way of life. As Katie returns to his house and prepares for sleep, his mind fills with quiet gratitude for the day's blessings and confidence about tomorrow's continuation of work that connects him to essential processes of life and growth. The satisfaction comes not just from material prosperity but from the spiritual fulfillment that accompanies work performed in service to family welfare and community good. The family's evening prayers include expressions of gratitude for the day's safety and success, requests for divine guidance in tomorrow's activities, and acknowledgement of their dependence on forces larger than human control. These prayers provide spiritual framework that transforms daily farming into religious service while maintaining humility about human limitations and divine grace. Sleep comes easily to farming families whose days are filled with meaningful work and whose nights bring the peaceful rest that accompanies physical satisfaction and spiritual contentment. The rhythm of their lives, closely synchronized with natural cycles of daylight and darkness, seasonal change, and river flow, creates harmony that supports both physical health and emotional well-being. Dreams of farming families often reflect the seasonal activities that structure their lives, dreams of green fields stretching toward harvest, of gentle floods bringing fertility to their land, of successful markets where their surplus crops bring prosperity that enables them to provide generously for family needs and community welfare. The peaceful sleep of Egyptian farming families represents more than mere physical rest. It embodies the deep security that comes from lives lived in harmony with natural systems and divine order. Their rest is the earned relaxation of people whose daily work contributes meaningfully to the fundamental processes that sustain life and civilization. Throughout the night, the gentle sounds of the Nile Valley continue their timeless rhythm, water flowing through irrigation channels, palm fronds rustling in the river breeze, and the soft calls of night birds maintaining their ancient vigil over fields that have supported human prosperity for thousands of years. The darkness brings no fear to these farming families, whose deep understanding of natural cycles includes appreciation for night as the time when plants rest and grow, when useful moisture condenses from cooling air, and when human beings restore the physical and spiritual energy needed for tomorrow's continuation of meaningful work. And so, as our peaceful journey through their timeless world concludes, we leave these gentle farmers to their well-deserved rest, carrying with us the inspiration of their example and the profound peace that comes from work performed in harmony with nature's wisdom and divine blessing. In the soft darkness of the Egyptian night, the eternal rhythms continue their ancient dance, the flow of the sacred river, the gentle breathing of sleeping families, and the quiet turning of seasons that will soon bring another cycle of flood, growth, and harvest to the fertile valley of the Nile. Sweet dreams, dear listeners, and may the peaceful wisdom of these ancient farmers guide you into your own restorative rest, knowing that tomorrow will bring new opportunities to live in harmony with the natural world and to find meaning in the simple, essential work of daily life.